Welcome to the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast.
Welcome to the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today we have Dr. Noah St. John, who has helped hundreds, if not thousands of people, I would say, achieve their full potential or get to where they want to get on their destination. So, number one, thank you for being here today, Dr. Noah. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ricardo. Great to be here today.
I love it. I love it. So before the podcast, Dr. Noah and I were getting to know each other a little bit. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you own any rental properties? He said, no, I have no desire to own any real estate or do any real estate whatsoever. And if you don't want me on the show, ain't no big deal, man. I know this is not for me. And I was like, no. I do want you on the show because you are coming from a place of, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, and real estate is not one of those things that I want to do, but I have helped many people, be successful or become successful in real estate. So before we get there, Dr. Noah, who are you? Where do you come from? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, yes, my name is Dr. Noah St. John. You can learn more about me on my website, noahstjohn.com. But basically, I'm known for helping entrepreneurs make more in 12 weeks than they did in the previous 12 months while winning their lives back at the same time, meaning winning back 1 to 3 hours per day and 4 to 8 weeks per year. So as I'm sure you know, Ricardo, and everybody listening to this program knows, many real estate entrepreneurs are working really, really hard in their business, but they're just not seeing the returns that they want. So what I do is I help people to remove the invisible brakes that are holding them back. And as a result of that, my clients consistently make more in just 12 weeks than they did in the previous 12 months while actually working less and actually winning their lives back. So that's what I'm known for. And that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years or so. I'm happy to share my origin story and how I started, right, if you want, or just...
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Well, you know what? All of this started many years ago, and it started very organically because I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood. Now, I know that's a total cliche, but it's really totally true. I grew up in this little town called Kennebunkport, Maine, which is one of the wealthiest communities in New England. But my family was dirt poor, and I mean that literally, because we lived at the bottom of a dirt road in a drafty, unfinished house that my parents ended up losing to foreclosure when I was just 15 years old. So from a very young age, I was painfully exposed to the gap, the chasm between the haves and the have-nots. The haves was everyone else in the community, and the have-nots was my family. Now, I hated being poor. I hated that life of poverty, fear, lack, not enoughness. That's what I grew up with because I saw that right down the street, there's great wealth and abundance. So I said, how the heck do I get from here to there? And of course, there was no one to help me. There was no internet or anything back then, all the things we have today. So I did the only thing I could think of is I went to the library and I read every book in the self-help section. I literally read over 300 self-help books, success books, all the classics, Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Stephen Covey. And I just immersed myself in the success literature of our time. And every book said basically the same thing, set your goals, think positive, work hard and hustle, and all of these things we've heard a million times. So I really applied myself. I really worked hard. I did everything the book said. But as hard as I tried, as hard as I worked, it just never seemed to work. So at the age of 25, I was frustrated, broke. My girlfriend had just left me. It was like a country song, but it was really true. But anyway, I was broke. I couldn't pay the rent and it was just awful. So at the age of 25, I made a decision to take my own life. I decided to commit suicide at age 25. Now, at the last moment, my life was spared, but I didn't know why. And I realized I've got to find what is my purpose here on the earth? What am I doing here? And I didn't know how to answer that. So guess what I did? I went back to the library. And this time I read every book in the spiritual section. And I read hundreds of spiritual books to try to find, what is my life purpose? Why am I here? These questions that humans have been asking for centuries, millennia, right? So fast forward 5 years later, in 1997, I had these epiphanies after reading hundreds of books. I realized what was missing and what they weren't telling us. And I realized that this was, in fact, my message. And I wrote my very first book. It was called Permission to Succeed. It was subsequently published by the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. And now, all these years later, I actually am now the only author in history that's had works published by Hay House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Mind Valley, Nightingale Conant, and the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. No other author in history has ever done that. Not Tony Robbins, not Wayne Dyer, not Deepak Chopra, just little old me. And so we have all that, 26 books in 19 languages. But what's even more important and exciting is my clients now, I've helped my clients in the past 30 years to add over $3 billion collectively, meaning helping entrepreneurs from all walks of life, over 140 countries, to add 6 figures, 7 figures, and even 8 figures and more as a result of my methods. So that's really how I got here, and then why I'm here today.
Did you go to college at all, or?
Yes, I did. I went to college twice, in fact.
Okay.
I went once when I was 18 and then once when I was 28. And then I did get my PhD in pastoral counseling psychology. That's what my doctorate is in, a PhD in pastoral counseling psychology. I thought at one point, before I'd written all these books, that I was going to be a pastor, or a minister. But God put me in a different direction, and so I ended up here.
I think you could have done a good job too doing that. You speak very well, and
thank you.
I can tell you speak from the heart. So,
thank you.
All right. So, what was that first book that you read that made an impact on you?
Well, the book that had, I've read every book in self-help,
but there was one that struck a chord.
The one that really had the biggest impact me was called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Now, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with that book, a seminal work in self-help, and actually I got to actually talk with Dr. Covey and interview him before he, of course, sadly passed away several years ago. But I actually got to interview him, and he was just wonderful. But that book really, really changed my life, because at that point when I read it, which was in the early 90s, I realized that prior to that point, I had been doing the 7 Habits of Highly Ineffective People my whole life. And so it really changed the course of my life, and was one of the main reasons that I decided to go back to college after leaving, years prior to that. And so, meeting Dr. Covey, getting to talk to him, was just one of the highlights of my life and my career.
Good. And now you're an implementer of that book, right? And possibly many other books that you've read throughout your lifetime. Why do you think humans, I'm not going to say entrepreneurs or I'm just going to do a general, overview. We get into self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm. So you're asking, why does that happen?
Yeah, why does that happen? Why self-sabotage? Why not achieve our full potential? Right.
I love that you're asking that, because guess what? That was the question I had too when I started all this. Because I'm like, I knew even all those years ago, I'm like, look, I'm a smart guy. I got straight A's in school. I skipped 8th grade. I was salutatorian and graduated second in my class, even after skipping 8th grade. I had National Merit Scholar and all this stuff. I had all of the things that you would think would make a person very successful. But, after getting out of school, I wasn't successful. And I realized one of the things that I realized at that time was that what they teach you in school and what you need to succeed in life are very, very different things. I'm sure most people have noticed that, right? Because, how often do you need like calculus or, trigonometry in the world? You never need that stuff. It's like, and I spent all this time doing my homework, got straight A's. I'm like, I wish someone would have told me, hey man, just save your time. You don't need any of this stuff later. I wish I would have known back then. But anyway, so that was one of the questions I had, is how come I'm, smart and capable and hardworking, and I'm not successful? What is this? What is causing this? So I read all these books on that very subject. What causes self-sabotage, and how do you not self-sabotage, right? So prior to my work, I realized something very interesting about the traditional success literature that was out there prior to my work, prior to my books being out there, my coaches and training and so forth. And if you're self-sabotaging, here was the advice that was out there prior to my work. If you're self-sabotaging, don't do that. Okay. What? What? Yeah. If you're sabotaging yourself, don't do that. Okay. Okay. You know what? You didn't help. That was
Right.
the advice. Basically, it was like, hey, stop doing that. It's like, what? Well, no kidding, dum dum. I mean, if I could have figured that one out, I would be successful, right? So what I realized is that, see, most of the coaching that's out there is really talking about symptoms. All right. So what they're talking about is a symptom. But what they don't talk about is that the symptom is caused by something else, a root cause. So let me give you an illustration of this. So imagine you wake up one day and you have a toothache. And I'm sure most people listening have had this happen. You know, you wake up one morning like, man, my tooth really hurts. Geez, what the heck? Right. And then what do? Of course, you ignore it, right? You just ignore it. You're like, you know what? I'll take some aspirin and hope it goes away. Well, after a few days, it doesn't go away. In fact, it gets worse. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm really in pain here. So what do? You make an appointment to go to the dentist. All right. So the dentist, he's examining you in the dentist chair. Now he looks at your tooth and he goes, and you say, you know, doc, hey, man, my tooth really hurts. And he goes, oh, yeah, well, you have a cavity. Okay, next. And what do you mean next? Wait a minute. What are you doing? And you'd be like, what do you mean next? I want you to fix this. I'm in pain, doc. You know, can you fix this? And he goes, oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Here's what I do. All right. So I'll tell you what, I'll write you out a prescription for painkillers. So take these painkillers and then you won't feel the pain so much. Now, what would you do? Of course, you'd run out of that office and go, what the heck is wrong with this idiot, right? So that's the illustration I like to use. But isn't that actually what's happening in the coaching space so much? They're talking about symptoms. Hey, if you're procrastinating, don't do that. Hey, if you're sabotaging yourself, stop doing that. No, duh. All right. You didn't help anything. So they're talking about symptoms, pain. Pain is a symptom, right? Oh, I'm sabotaging myself. Oh, I'm procrastinating. Oh, I'm not making the money I want. Symptom, pain. So what do we need to do? We need to get to the cause. Why is this happening? All right. And what's fascinating about that is almost nobody talks about this, even though it's so incredibly obvious when I say it like that. Almost nobody's doing it, right? In fact, Thomas Jefferson said many years ago, he had a great quote. He said that for every 99 that is striking away or that is hacking away at the leaves of truth, there is one striking at the root. Isn't that a great quote? For every 99 hacking away at the leaves of truth, there's one striking at the root. So we have to get to the root of why we're sabotaging stuff. So basically, that's really what my all these 25 books I've written are about, is why we're holding ourselves back and how to fix it. So one of the main reasons why we hold ourselves back, meaning self-sabotage, which remember, that's a behavior, that's a symptom up here. It's not a cause. Now, of course, it's causing other problems, right? Yes. It's causing the fact that, you know, you don't have the money you want, or you're not making the deals, you're not getting the clients or whatever, right? So believe me, I understand that, yes, it's causing other problems, but the symptom is still a symptom. That's not the cause, all right? That's not the cause of the behavior. Self-sabotage is a behavior. We have to get to the cause. So what's the cause? Well, what I've written 25 books about, which is what I call your head trash. All right. So I want everyone to think about this. Everyone who's listening to this program, I want you to think about your goals. Now, everybody and their brother talks about goals, right? We've heard this a million times. You got to set your goals. You got to think positive, write it down. We've heard that a million times. And what's interesting is that's actually half right. They're half right. All right. So what they're right about is the fact that we humans are goal-oriented organisms. We're always constantly thinking about what we want, right? Whether it's a new car, a new house, to make more money, to get that promotion at work, to get the new clients, or to have a ham sandwich for lunch, right? We're always thinking about what is it we want and then, you know, taking steps to do it. But what's fascinating about that is we've heard so much about goals. Everybody talks about goals. But what they don't talk about is the most important part of the equation. And that is what happens after you set a goal. Now, let me give you an example. All right. So let's say you're a real estate entrepreneur and you want to go from right now you're making $10,000 a month in your business. Okay. Let's just use that as an example. You're making $10,000 a month. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to get to $100,000 a month. All right. That's your goal, right? So you're here and you want to get to there, right? 10K to 100K, or you're at 100K. You want to get to $1 million or $1 million, 5 million, 10 million. You get the idea. The numbers don't matter. So wherever you are and wherever you want to be, that is actually irrelevant. The numbers don't matter, because here's what really matters. Where you are is your current reality, But where you want to get to is your new desired reality. So it's a destination. It's like driving your car, right? Because that's precisely what it is. A goal is a destination, right? So imagine you're driving in your car and you're driving to your destination. But unbeknownst to you, you have unwittingly and unknowingly developed that unconscious habit of driving with one foot on the brake. So here you are, you're driving down the road to your goals. You have one foot on the gas, which is driving you forward, but you have the other foot on the brake. Now, how long do you think it's going to take you to reach your destination? A
Much more.
long time, right? And meanwhile, you're using all this time, effort, energy, and money, but you're like, how come I keep holding myself back? Right. And so that is what one of the main reasons that I've helped my clients add over $3 billion over the last 30 years is because I help them, number one, to identify their invisible brake that's holding them back. And of course, number two, to release the brakes and thereby make a lot more money in a lot less time.
What is the most common invisible brake you've seen around?
Well, there's many. There are many, which again, I talk about in my books and my coaching and my courses. You can go to our website and see that. But one of the main things that hold people back is the belief of unworthiness. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. It's just a very simple belief. I'm not enough. Right. In fact, it's funny because many years ago, when I first started teaching people this in the late 90s, 97, 98, 99, my very first email newsletter that I published was called You Are Enough, because I realized that the one message that most human beings do not get in this lifetime is you are enough, right? So think about all the ways that we tell ourselves we're not enough, right? So let's, I'll use another illustration. So let's imagine you're at a party, right? And you see someone across the room that you'd really like to talk to. And you're like, oh, wow, that person looks really interesting. I'd like to talk to them. But what instantly happens in your mind, right? You instantly start to say to yourself, they probably wouldn't be interested. Oh, I'm not tall enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm probably too fat or too skinny. I'm not rich enough. I don't have enough money. I'm not very impressive. You see what it just did? You just totally psyched yourself out before you even got in the game. Right. So that's just a very common illustration of how these things come up. What's another illustration? Let's say you're in business, right? You're thinking about calling that prospect, calling that, potential client. And what do? You say, they're probably too busy. I don't think, why would they want to talk to me? They probably get so many phone calls a day. Nobody returns calls anymore. Why bother? You see what you just did? You psyched yourself out again just by virtue of saying, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. Why would anyone want to talk to me? These are just simple examples. But see, we believe that, and then it permeates everything. It literally becomes part of why that invisible brake is holding us back. Now, if you ask most people and you would say, do you think you're enough? They'd say, well, of course I do. I know I'm enough. But see, that's conscious. That's a conscious reaction.
That's the conscious mind thinking, not the subconscious mind.
Exactly. And so what I teach my clients is the Iceberg Principle. See, the Iceberg Principle of human behavior states that only about 5% of our thoughts, behaviors, and actions are conscious. But the vast 95% is unconscious. It's below the surface like the iceberg, right? So the iceberg is, you can see that 5% at the top, but the vast 95% is below the surface of consciousness. And as I always tell my clients, it's not the part of the iceberg that they could see that sunk the Titanic. It's the part they didn't see that sunk the Titanic. And that's what's sinking most people too.
I love it, Noah. Look, at this morning, every morning in my office, we have a huddle, okay, a morning huddle, and today, actually, in particular, I put a video on neurolinguistics programming to my team on how people process information, how we can communicate. Why is it that some people live in fear and some other ones live in joy? All of those things. And it's as you're talking, I'm reflecting back on our morning huddle today. Now, based on that, basically that being not enough, right? Like I think every human being out there at some point has thought they're not enough. Okay, and and I know that you teach this in your books and your sessions and all that, but what is one thing that you can advise our audience on changing the feeling of worthiness? Like what, maybe an exercise or something that we can do to feel that we're enough.
Absolutely. And yes, you're right. This is exactly what I teach in my books, my coaching, my courses. Go to the website. You can learn more about it, get the books. But yeah, this is exactly what I teach. It's called the Power Habit System. And the full name of it is the Power Habits of Unconsciously Successful People. Now, I was just talking about that iceberg principle, right? The
Yeah.
5% above the surface that's conscious, the vast 95% that's in the subconscious. So what we need to do, and what I teach my clients to do, is take the unconscious habits of highly successful people, the people who don't have their foot on the brake, who don't think they're not enough. And that's a very, very small percentage of humans. You know, what you just said is totally right. Certainly the vast majority of humans believe they're not enough, but there is a tiny, tiny percentage, I call them the 1%ers, that have never had that thought. They're like, what are you talking about? Of course I'm enough, right? But they're very rare, right? They're in the minority, but we can learn from them. The problem with them is that they can never teach it to you, right? Because they're unconscious. So what I did many years ago, you know, I codified the system, I systematize it, and I actually now teach what highly successful people do unconsciously that they don't even know they're doing, and therefore they can never teach it to you. So that's what I do, is I teach it, and that's why I help people make so much money. So one of the things that I help my clients with that you can do literally right now, today, you know, like in your daily huddles, but you know, if you're listening to this program and maybe you don't have a team or you're all alone, you can do it on your own, right? So it doesn't matter. But here's one thing you can do right now. So I want you to write down your goals. Right now, you've heard that a million times, I know, but you really do need to do that. As I said earlier, we humans are goal-oriented organisms. So if you're not clear on your goals, you really do have to do that, right? So even if you've heard it a million times, maybe you haven't done it yet. All right. So make sure you do it. Now, here's what's very important about this, by the way. You really do have to get very specific. All right. You have to get specific in terms of, if you're talking about money, okay, well, what amount of money? And then in what time frame? All right. So you can't just say, hey, Noah, I want more money. Okay, well, here's $5. Go away. No.
It's 1 cent.
Exactly. Right. You got to be a lot more specific. I want to go, the example I gave her, I want to go from 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month in the next 90 days, whatever it is. Okay. So be very clear on that. That is very important. But then I want you to write down all the reasons why you're telling yourself you can't do it. All your reasons you say, well, no, that's impossible. I can't do that. Well, why not? Well, I don't have the time. I'm too busy, right? I don't have the money. I can't afford that. I can't afford this. I don't know where to start. I don't know who to trust. Oh, I've tried everything before, and it just doesn't work, and I've hired coaches before and they're all liars. They don't even know what you see what I'm doing here? I'm listing all the reasons why you're telling yourself you can't reach your goal. And what's fascinating about this, Ricardo, is you always make yourself right. You always make yourself right. Everyone listening to this program and every human on earth is incredibly good at making themselves right. We humans have an infinite capacity to make ourselves right, don't we? So if you're sitting there saying, hey, Noah, I want to go from 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month, or 100,000 to a million, or whatever the number is, but I can't do it because I'm too busy. I don't have the time. I can't do it. Right? Guess what? You're going to make yourself right. And then you get to be right and you get to be stuck. Isn't that wonderful? No, it's not wonderful, but actually it is. So your brain is saying, hey, I told you so. and you're like, but I don't want that to be true. Okay. So are you willing to fight for what you want? Because guess what? For everyone listening to this program, I want you to hear me very clearly right now. Everything you desire is on the other side of fear. Everything you desire is on the other side of fear. What does that mean? It means that you are where you are right now and you are comfortable. Now, you may not be happy and you may not even like it, but guess what? You're comfortable. Why are you comfortable? Because you know it, right? You are where you are. I'm here. And you know what? Your brain has an amazing job. You know what your brain's main job is? To make sure you're not dead. Your brain's job is to keep you not dead every day. What's a great way to keep you not dead? Don't go for something you're afraid of, right? Because if you're afraid of something, it might hurt you. It might kill you. These are ancient thoughts, right? Our caveman brain, way back here. I'm pointing to the back of my head. Right. Way buried deep here, the caveman brain that was, thousands and thousands of years ago. Because guess what? If you go for something you're afraid of, it might be a woolly mammoth. It might be a saber-toothed tiger that might eat you, jump out of the bushes and, chomp you to bits. Well, we don't have too many saber-toothed tigers running around right now, but it doesn't matter, right? We still have those same fears inside of us, don't we? All right. So this is what I'm saying for you to do. Number one, get very clear on your goals. But number two, what are the messages you're telling yourself of why you can't do it? And that is your head trash. Now, let me give an example of this. Okay. So I was speaking at a real estate conference in Phoenix a few years ago, and I was talking about exactly what I'm sharing with you right now. Right. And I got off the stage and a man named Bill came up to me and he said, "Hey, Noah, this all sounds great, but I've been studying this stuff for like 30 years and I've tried everything before. And, what makes this any different?" Now, he was expecting a sales pitch, right? When someone says something like that, he's expecting a sales pitch. And, well, mine's better because, and I didn't do that. I never do that. I'm like, dude. So I actually said, I'm like, I don't know, Bill, what do you think? What do you think makes this different? You just heard me speak. What do you think? He goes, well, it really did sound different. And then he convinced himself of why it was different. You see, he was like wanting me to do that sales pitch. I don't do a sales pitch. Why do it sells itself. You either get it or you don't, right? So he's like, and he said, well, it really does sound different because you're not talking about like working harder. You're actually talking about working less. And when you get your foot off the brake, you'll actually work less and make more. I go, yep, that's pretty much how it works. Yeah. So he goes, all right, I'll sign up. So he's not, he bought my coaching program. That's what I was, offering at the conference. Right. So anyway, he bought the program and he was a really good student. He went through, he did everything I told him. Well, he actually, after 12 weeks of coaching with me, he started doing multi-million-dollar deals. Now, he had never done anything like that before. He was doing six figures, but he'd never done multi-million-dollar deals before. And then guess what? Shortly after that, in the next 12 weeks, he started doing multi-billion-dollar deals with a B. All right. So as a result of coaching with me, he added over $300 million, in commissions, in sales, as a result of coaching with me. So, you can watch his video and many, many others on the website, but that is an example of how powerful this is. When you're holding yourself back, when you have that invisible brake going, that head trash, as I call it, you're holding yourself back and you don't even realize why. And you don't even realize what's possible on the other side of that. So that's something that every single person listening to this can do right now today.
Good. So, all right. So let's say I'm able to set my goals.
Yeah.
Let's talk about goals for a second, right? Because sometimes you hear people say you gotta do the SMART goals, right? Where they're achievable, that you can measure, and then you got others that say put your goals so big that that they're very hard to achieve or whatever. Right. So if you fall or if you fail, even if you achieve 10% of that, you still get to whatever destination, right? Now, what's your take on goal setting? What is the proper way of doing a goal setting?
Oh yeah, I've studied all that and I've heard it all a million times. And they're all good, I guess. They all have their pros and cons. I think SMART goals is, smart. It does make sense because it's specific, measurable, achievable, whatever the other things are. Right. And time centric, Right. So but see, like I just said, none of those take into account what I teach my clients, which I just shared with you, with your audience, which is what happens after you set the stupid goal, right? So that's what they never talk about. They basically just say, okay, set your goals. All right, good luck. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? So that's why what I teach is really 10 times more important, because think about this for 1 second. All right. So let's say, remember, I talked about your being in your car, right? So your goal is a destination. That actually is what a goal is. It's a destination. You're here and you want to be there, right? So imagine it's like going to the grocery store, right? So, you're at home and you're like, oh gosh, I got to pick up some groceries, right? So what do? You get in your car and you say, my destination is the grocery store because I have to pick up some milk and eggs and bread and whatever, right? So that's why you go to the grocery store. Now, here's what you wouldn't do. You would never get in your car, drive to the grocery store, walk around the store for an hour, get back in your car and come home. That would be idiotic, right? Why would you do that, right? That doesn't make any sense. But that's actually what a lot of people are doing. They're driving in their car, they get somewhere and they're like, I don't even know why I got here. What are we doing here? So that's not great, right? So you got to have a reason why. Why do you want to go there? Why do you want that thing? Why do you want to go from 10K to 100K a month? Why do you want to go from 100K to a million to 5 million, whatever? Right? Well, I want more money. Okay, no kidding. Everybody wants more money. What are you going to do with it? You're going to just sit around and look at it? Oh, wow, look at that pile of money. Hey, that's great. I mean, I guess you could do that for a while. That's, I mean, yeah, but it's kind of boring. It's like, okay, yay, money. I mean, but the point is, this is what I teach my clients all the time. Money isn't money. This is the thing that people like freaks people out. What? What do you mean money isn't money? Money isn't money. Money is what you think money is. Money is the feeling that money gives you. So going back to my story, I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood. I mean, that really happened, right? That's a true story. So I know what poverty feels like, and it sucks. There's nothing good about it, right? People say, well, you know, I'm morally superior because I'm not making as much money as this guy, and he's making more money, so he's got to be a bad guy. Really? That's your argument? Good luck with that, right? Because guess what? That person who has money can do a lot more good than you can do being, you know, a broke martyr. No, you want to have that money. Why? And I mean, so what does it represent to you? Why are you going to that grocery store? Do you see what I'm getting at? Why are you going to that store? Well, I want to, you know, be able to send my kids to the best schools. Great. That's a great reason. I want to be able to take vacations with my family and have fun. I want to be able to, you know, buy a new car and a new house or whatever it is. And these is the value of experiences. This is what studies have shown for years. The value of experiences grows over time, whereas the value of things decreases over time. Isn't that interesting? That. So like when I ask my clients all the time, you know, just what's like one of your happiest memories? Do you know what one of their happiest memories never is? Buying stuff. You know, like, boy, I bought a new car and boy, that was great. Now, again, I'm not putting that down. I'm like, hey, if you want a new car, go get it. And that's awesome. And that's what a lot of people use their money for. That's great. And that's a great feeling. But what does the new car represent? It represents a feeling of status, of importance, of I've arrived, of I'm good enough. You see what I mean? It's those feelings that we really want. So that's why I say, and I'm right, that money isn't money. It's what you do with the money. That's what counts.
And what is that one thing that most people remember feelings wise, right? Like, is it vacations? Is it love?
Yeah, it's experiences. Exactly. That's what I was getting to. It's experiences. You know, when like I'll give you a perfect example. I was coaching one of my clients named Stacy. She's a health professional up in Canada, and she was doing well in her business. You know, kind of like Bill. You know, 6 figures, but couldn't break through that revenue ceiling. And so I coached her. And as we started coaching, I asked her this very question. I said, "So, you know, Stacy, like, what's your dream? What's your dream that, you know, if we make you all this money, what would you want to do with it?" Right? And I ask all my clients that. She said, "You know what, Noah? This is my dream. Is I want to take my family on a trip to the Grand Canyon." Now she's up in Canada. She's never been there before. Now she's got 4 kids, so you know it's a big family, right? And so you know it's a lot of money, right, to go to the Grand Canyon, have a VIP tour and whatever. And I said that is awesome, you know, because I actually share that story in my seminar. Sometimes I took my wife on a trip to the Grand Canyon. We had so much fun. You know, that's one of the stories I share. So she heard that story and she's like, I want to do that too. I was like, great. It's so fun. So I said, so Stacy, just out of curiosity, how long do you think it would take you to reach that Grand Canyon, you know, to get that experience? Like if we could get you that, like as fast as you could possibly imagine, like what would that look like? She said, gosh, no, you know, if we could do it in like 5 to 7 years, if we could have that in less, like 5 to 7 years, that'd be incredible, right? So I coached her, you know, walked her through this whole thing. We installed these systems and everything else. She sent me an email with these pictures from the Grand Canyon. She'd taken her family on the trip. Guess how long it took her? Less than 18 months. Less than 18 months from 0 to Grand Canyon. So think about that for everyone listening. I just want you to get in your head. All right. So her like dream scenario was 5 to 7 years. We got her there in 18 months. So think about that. Just even in her dreams, she was holding herself back. So how does that apply to you for everyone listening? Maybe even in your dreams, you might be holding yourself back and not even realize it. So we got to get rid of that head trash.
I think we all hold ourselves back, regardless of how much personal development and goal setting, and we can always do more and be more, right?
That's right.
And as you're talking, I'm reflecting on many things that I could have done more or whatever, and what are some daily exercises that we can practice to
Mhm.
encourage ourselves to take action, right? Because we're so I'm an action taker. I jump in and then I
Mhm.
figured out how to build a parachute. Okay, but sometimes let's
Mhm.
say I want to go and I don't know. Like I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
My I'm taking my family to Europe next year on a trip.
Nice.
Okay, and we're going there for
Great.
the whole summer. We're gonna go
Oh
visit
boy.
multiple countries. Okay.
Wonderful.
Now, how did I come up with that trip? I had to persuade my wife and kids to move from the United States to Venezuela,
Mm.
and which is a huge change,
Mm.
culturally and way of living, the whole nine yards. One of the reasons is my whole office is here, and I wanted to be here, present with
Mhm.
my staff, and
Sure.
my kids at the beginning they didn't want to do it, but then and they cried and they argued about it. Why am I going to pull them out of schools and their friends and all that? So I had to sell them on the experience of, hey,
Mhm.
let's go. I know it's uncomfortable to move to a place. It's a third world country. We don't live by the
Mm.
same rules that we do in the U.S. There
Mm.
are pros and cons. Now, of course, I focused on the pros, right? These are the pros. We're going to be able to save more money. We're going to be able to travel
Right.
more. We're going to, so I created a whole set of experiences. But for that, we had to make a move that was very uncomfortable, not only
Yes.
for my wife, my kids, but also for myself, um, because I knew that
Mhm.
that end goal of and one of them is traveling, but it's not like there's plenty of other reasons why we did this. We had to
Sure.
put ourselves as a family in a very uncomfortable situation, right? Why is
Mm.
it that people hesitate to put themselves in a situation that they're uncomfortable to achieve their ultimate potential?
As I'm sure everyone listening to this program knows, the human being is driven by two main desires: the desire to gain pleasure and the desire to avoid pain. Okay. So, and that is just basic biology. Every organism from, the bacteria to the human, that is our job, right? To avoid pain, meaning don't die, and gain pleasure, stay alive. All right.
Hmm.
So, what you did in that example, Ricardo, I love that example because what you did was you saw that if I go through this pain and it's going to hurt, at the end of that, or as a result of going through it, I'm going to experience pleasure. This thing that I want, being in Venezuela, will give me all of these pros, as you said,
Right.
right? So you did, what I teach, which is what do you want? And like I said earlier in this program, everything you desire is on the other side of fear. Well, what's another way of saying fear? Fear is going towards something that scares you. Fear is going towards pain, right? And so fear is actually the brain's message saying, what if this causes me more pain than the pain I'm currently experiencing? That's all that fear is. Fear is not false evidence appearing real. That's what every motivational speaker says. That is a lie. I've been teaching this for decades. When they say false evidence appearing real, that's a lie. That's not what fear is at all. Fear is a message from you to you saying, hey, what if doing this causes me more pain than the pain I'm currently experiencing? So that's why people are afraid. Like picking up the phone and calling that prospect. Oh my gosh, what if they reject me? That's pain. What if they hang up on me? That's pain. What if they don't buy from me? That's pain. You see what I mean? So they're scared, so they don't do it. Okay, you know what? Let me go watch TV instead, and at least I don't have to feel pain. Great. You're not making any money, but at least you're not dead. You see what? So all this works together. This all where everything that I have been talking about, everything I teach in my books and seminars and coaching, it all works together to keep you stuck, right? So what you did was a great example of I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through pain, and my wife isn't going to like it. My kids aren't going to like it, and I'm probably not even going to like it for a while.
Right.
But I'm doing it because I want this thing at the end, and that is the very thing that most people will not do. They won't do it because of that pain that I'm talking about. So your story that you just gave was a great illustration of when you make that decision that, well, yeah, it is going to hurt. It's not going to be any fun for a while. But once we get to the end, it's going to be good. So that's what most people won't do. They'll just stay comfortable. They'll watch TV. They'll scroll social media because they're too scared to take that action.
Is there a way, maybe an exercise that you can recommend the audience to turn that fear into action?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and, again, this is a big part of what I do in my one-on-one and group coaching. And, you can learn more about that on the website. But basically, one thing you can do is, and I have my clients do this all the time, is you have to write it down, similar to what you did, and so, okay, this is what I want. And even if it's as simple as the illustrations I've been giving, I want to go from making 10,000 to 100,000 a month. Well, guess what? All of that sounds great. But then why aren't you already there?
Right.
Because probably most people listening to this program know probably how to get there. So why aren't you there? Well, so we have to look at, number one, what do you have to do to get there? What are the things you're going to have to do? Number one. But number two, what are you going to have to give up? What are you going to have to stop doing to get there? All right. So I'll give you another great example from another one of my clients named Charles. So when I start coaching someone, whether it's in my group coaching or one-on-one, I always ask them a series of questions, right? And one of the questions I ask them is, how much do you think it's going to cost you if you don't do this? Like if you don't take out your head trash, if you keep holding yourself back, how much do you think it's going to cost you? Well, I asked my client Charles this, and he said $1 million. No, this is easily going to cost me $1 million if I don't do all these things you're talking about, if I don't install these systems that you teach. And so I said, well, I tell you what, Charles, why don't you just give me 10% of that million, and I'll find you $1 million in the next 12 months. If you give me $1 and I give you $10 back, isn't that a good deal? He goes, yeah, that's a good deal. Yeah. So he did that. He invested $100K, that's 10% of $1 million, right? To get one-on-one coaching with me. Now I coached him for a year, and in that year, as it turns out, I didn't find him $1 million. Instead, I found him 1.8 million in just 10 months. So he gave me $1 and I gave him $18 back. And he even sent me an email and he said, guess what? I'm on a 7-week vacation with my wife. This is a dream I've had for the last 20 years, but I never had the time or the money before. And he said, thank you, Noah, for changing my life. So the point is, what's the lesson for everyone listening? What is that thing that you want, that you really desire? What are you going to have to do to get it, which you probably already know, but what are you going to have to give up? Now, I'll tell you another example. Now, this is a famous story. This is not one of my clients, but it's a famous story of someone we all know. His name's John Grisham, the author. Everybody, I'm sure, knows who John Grisham, the author, is. Well, at one point, John Grisham was not a famous author. He was actually a law clerk in Mississippi. But he had a dream of being an author, of being, writing mystery novels, law novels. But he had a wife, he had, little kids, and he had to, was making basically minimum wage as a law clerk. He's like, I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I mean, when am I supposed to do this? But he had that dream, right? Well, what did he decide to do? He said, well, my dream is bigger than my excuses. So every night he would put his kids to bed. He would give his wife a kiss, to say, okay, honey. And he would go, this is no lie, he would go into his laundry room and he set up a typewriter on an ironing board. And he typed out, with 2 fingers, his first novel, which was A Time to Kill. And of course, went on to be a famous movie with Matthew McConaughey. And now, of course, we all know who John Grisham is. But so the point is, he didn't let his excuses stop him. Oh, I don't have the time. Well, you know what? He found the time. He made the time. So these are just some things that everybody can do. What are you willing to do? Yes. But what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? Maybe you have to give up, an hour or 2 of TV watching for a little while. I'm not saying you never have fun again. I'm saying maybe just for a little while, just a little bit of time, you have to give up a few things to get that thing that you really do want.
I love it. Dr. Noah, thank you so much for being here today. I think that was an amazing final message to the audience, to be honest with you. I usually ask, do you have a final message? But you just gave it. How can so I know people can get a hold of you from the website, noahstjohn.com. Is there a free tool or something along those lines that you have on the website that people can access so they can better their lives?
Oh, Tons. Yeah. So if you go to noahstjohn.com, that's the main hub, and you can see videos and coaching and books and training. But if you go to breakthroughwithnoah.com, that's easy to remember. I'm known as the breakthrough coach. So breakthroughwithnoah.com. We actually also have a free revenue ceiling audit. Now, what that means is I am known for helping people make more in 12 weeks than they did in the previous 12 months, right? While winning their lives back. But that means by definition that everyone listening to this program right now has a revenue ceiling. That means you're hitting your head on the ceiling, and no matter how hard you work, you can't break through that ceiling, right? Like everybody I've coached, the hundreds of people that I've coached over the last 30 years. So the point is, go to breakthroughwithnoah.com and just fill in your information. You're going to answer a few questions, and it will actually show you how to break through that revenue ceiling. And then you'll get on a Zoom call with me or one of my coaches, and we'll actually give you a 3-step plan to break through that revenue ceiling literally in the next 12 weeks or less. So that's at breakthroughwithnoah.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget to hit share, like, and subscribe, guys. If you know of somebody that needs this information, send this podcast over to them. Dr. Noah will be more than happy to help them and help you if it's you, the one that needs this. I think we all need it. I practice self-development on a daily basis because I believe it's like taking a shower. And we live in a world that's got a lot of information that is not necessarily the correct one for us, and we have to pick and choose what we feed our minds with. So with that being said, Dr. Noah, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You guys have a great day.